Hey everyone, and welcome to the Rising Flame podcast. My name is Sabrina Perry, and this is episode 3, Black Ribbon Army. This is my story of widowhood and going through the darkest and hardest time of my entire life. So we're going to pick up right where the last episode left off, which was the end of 2018. As I mentioned in the last episode, in 2018, I had my 5th baby and had a pretty slow recovery with him. So towards the end of 2018, I started to finally feel a little better. He was getting closer to his first birthday, and we were settling into our new normal. My business had picked back up, and it was pretty steady. I had my workout and my diet routine pretty dialed in. And I finally felt like I was back, after having the baby and the recovery and all of that. We're still living out in the Applegate Valley in Southern Oregon at this time. And baby is almost a year old. Business was, like I said, picking back up a little bit. I was feeling a little more balanced and ready to take on life. Just minding my own business, doing my thing out in the country, right? So the beginning of 2019, I'll back up. For about 10 years now, every beginning of every new year, I get like a word. And, it's like a download of a word of something that maybe I need to focus on, or something that is going to be happening, or just helps me with my introspection and my journey. So the beginning of 2019, my word was change. And I was like, okay, well, things are going to be changing. Okay. And we weren't really sure, we thought maybe we would move, or maybe we would, my husband was looking possibly at getting a new job. So there was different things that could have changed. Right. I also had a feeling that the other word was to get strong. So after having the baby and, feeling really crappy physically, I really was getting, like I said, my diet and workout routine, and I wanted to just get strong. Like that was like my word. I was like, I got to get strong. I just want to be strong, and so I started lifting and I started running, and I started to really feel good about myself in early 2019. Mark mentioned to me, my husband at the time, my first husband. Those of you that haven't, if you're not caught up with the first 2 episodes, then this episode might not make sense. So you might want to go back. So Mark was my first husband. We got married in 2004, and we had 5 children together. So, but he mentioned to me in the beginning of 2019 that he had like this bump on the bottom of his foot. And I thought that was weird, but, I didn't really think anything of it. He was on his feet a lot at work. I thought maybe it was a pressure thing, or maybe it was a wart. I mean, who knows, dude, right? So I just was like, yeah, put something on it. And so he treated it at home for a few months, and like it actually went away for a little bit. And then it came back, and that was kind of odd because usually an owie, doesn't just come back randomly. So it eventually got so inflamed and enlarged, about probably the size of a dime at this point, that we figured, it might be a good idea to get it checked out. So he went to get it checked out. They did a biopsy of it. And in May of 2019, he was diagnosed with a nodular malignant melanoma tumor on the bottom of his right foot. So that was really scary news to find out. It was about a day before our youngest daughter's birthday party. And so we carried through the birthday party with this news of like, holy crap, that's cancer. Without telling anybody. We didn't tell the kids, we didn't tell any family or anything. There were too many questions at this point with not enough answers. So the results of the biopsy came back fairly quickly, and that was bad news right away. Like the result of the biopsy showed that the growth rate of the cancer, so at which rate the cancer cells were dividing and spreading, was extremely high. and that the surgery to remove that nodular tumor out of his foot would be pretty invasive. So by June, he had the excision done to remove the nodular melanoma out of his foot, and then also the growing lymph node on the same leg. There was a couple weeks of appointments, dealing with the wound vac, lots of pain, scans, waiting on insurance. Like, this was a super tumultuous time in the early stages because not having any answers, not knowing what was going on, doctors telling you very little, it was very stressful. In fact, when he had the surgery done on his foot, the scan had already been done. And I asked his surgeon, so what was on the scan? And the surgeon was like, oh, I can't tell you that. And I was like, you should be able to, but, because he was not the oncologist or his doctor, he wasn't qualified to give me that information. But we kind of knew and had a gut feeling that based on his response to us that what was found on the scan was not good, because if it would have been nothing, I feel like he would have been like, oh, it was just this, or, whatever. So the fact that the scan had some questionable things on it was scary. So dealing with all of that, the post-surgery, the news of everything, we were still just trying to get some answers to figure out, what our options were, what we could do, what this was going to look like for us long term. And so Mark's parents and I decided to get him to MD Anderson in Houston, Texas, to see one of the top melanoma specialists in basically the country. We felt that the nature of his melanoma, the symptoms he was having, and the small amount of information that we were being given, that we might just be dealing with something more than just a foot tumor and a lymph node. So we flew to Houston. This was quite an ordeal because, as you know, we have 5 children. The youngest at this point was about a year and a half old. So my mom flew up to take care of all 4 of our older kids, and then we ended up taking the baby with us, which was good, but also exhausting, as you can imagine. But we made it to Houston, and I love to tell the story of Houston because it was simultaneously the most heartbreaking and tragic moments, but also the most amazing and divine brought together, by God moments. And these were just amazing, beautiful things. And it started out with our flight to Houston. So we were sitting in the back, and this woman, as we were getting off the airplane, brought us back a Bible, and she handed it to us. And she said, I just felt very led to give this to you and to tell you that whatever you're going through right now, that God has you. And we were just like, whoa, okay. That was right off the bat very comforting and very sweet and very amazing, super amazing. It gets better. We opened the Bible and there was $100 in it. And so that was a huge blessing too, because, we were stressing about the finances. Of course, Mark wasn't working at this time because of the surgery and, everything that had been going on. So it was just such a little gift blessing right away, right off the bat, before our feet even touched the ground in Houston, which was so amazing. And then when we were at MD Anderson in Houston, the staff, everybody, every single person we met with just was amazing. They were so sweet, so accommodating, so welcoming. Everybody would I love to also tell the stories about how those Southern ladies would just freak out over my little guy because he was only, like I said, about 15 months or so at the time, and just cutest little kid, curly hair, big blue eyes. I mean, he was ridiculously cute, but these women would just freak out over how cute he was. So it was a we felt very warm and very welcomed there. But while we met with Dr. Amaria, one of the top in the melanoma department, she confirmed the worst of our fears. She officially diagnosed Mark with stage 4 metastatic malignant melanoma with confirmed metastases to his femur, his spine, and his clavicle. The cancer was very aggressive and would likely not respond to treatment, and his prognosis was terminal. So this was the news we received, that he was going to have to medically retire. I would have to become his full-time caregiver. And in that moment, it was just like everything went from like, this is how it was to this is how it is. Like that changed everything, right? Like there was nothing ever the same after that moment because we knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that he was going to die. We didn't know when, and we didn't know, what that was going to actually be at that moment, but we knew that it was not going to end up good. He was tested negative for a specific gene. So like gene therapy was off the table as an option. They do not treat melanoma with chemo at all. So our only options were immunotherapy and radiation, which he could continue to do in Oregon. So he started having treatment and having MRIs done to see exactly where the melanoma was. It was, like I said, it was in some of the vertebrae. It was in the clavicle. In fact, toward the end, I could see actually like the lump over the clavicle. And then obviously the femur, it had an 11 centimeter cancer, whatever you would call that. I have it written down somewhere, but it was 11 centimeters of cancer in his femur, and it was up near the hip. So he was having mobility issues like almost right away. So he started treatment with the immunotherapy, and the first treatment did not go very well. He did not respond to it well. It put him in a lot of pain and discomfort. So much so that I ended up taking him to ER because of the pain medications and protocol we had at home were not enough to even touch the pain. So took him to ER, and basically, what they said is that the immunotherapy had caused his body to almost have like an autoimmune flare. So it made his body react even more and worse. And our options were, he could either muscle through that or do like steroids, which the problem with steroids would be that they would reverse the effects of the immunotherapy. So it was basically like to get him out of pain and give him the steroids was going to undo what was just done with the immunotherapy. So he went through that, his first treatment. I would say that was probably in July. And they were monitoring him for spinal compression and degradation of the vertebrae. Obviously, the same thing going on with that femur near the hip, because the bones just become so brittle and weak during cancer. So I have a note here that I just was like, I was taking notes because I had a Ziegler family support page. So at first we didn't tell hardly anybody what was going on. I'm a very private person. I'm an introvert, about what's going on in my life privately. And, so was Mark. So we didn't tell anybody right away, but then it got to the point where we knew we were going to need support. We knew we were going to need family and friends, around us, helping us. And so I created a Facebook group that was just, where I was putting up all my updates of what was happening, what we were going through, prayer requests, tangible ways people could help, all of this. This group became amazing, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. But I had a post here that I copied and pasted into my notes from that group because it kind of helped, refresh my memory as I wanted to dig into this for a podcast episode. But I just said basically what my life was like at this point, and it was appointments, waiting, scans, labs, driving, in addition to life, right? So kids, bills, laundry, dishes, dinner, and the small amount I was still doing for the bakery. The prayer requests at this time were for his pain management being the top priority, followed by provision and support for our family. It was taking its toll emotionally, financially, physically, and spiritually. I said, exhaustion doesn't even quite cover it. I've damn near reached the end of my rope. And that was in July. And I thought I reached the end of my rope in July, but I still had a while to go, right? So at this time we had, like I said, we had family, we had friends, everybody was stepping up and helping. And I was, had to come to a point, very hard decisions, where we were selling things, we were, getting rid of things, knowing that he was going to die, knowing that he had maybe a 6 to 10 month, we had that range to work with, not really knowing at that point, but we were basically preparing for his death. And I had to make the very, very hard decision to close my bakery business. That broke my heart. If you listen to the previous episode, obviously you know that my bakery was my passion. That was my baby. Like, I had poured so much work into that. I had developed such a great, little clientele in the Southern Oregon area. My business had, its own awesome little reputation. And it was very, very hard to close it and make that decision to close that door, not knowing if or when I would ever be able to pick it up again. And so that was hard. But, my family came first, having to take care of everything that was happening came first. Mark was medically retired, obviously, at this point also because of the prognosis being so poor. I mean, it was either that he was going to be so handicapped or die, so wouldn't be able to ever work again. So that was basically, we went from working, him working full time and me doing my business and us being, like on track with everything and, organized and having our shit together, to the rug being freaking pulled out from under us, literally, like just everything going, holy crap. Like, this just got real, real fast. So to put that in perspective, again, January, he tells me about his foot, right around in that range. We get a diagnosis in May. We're now in July and things are not going good. Things are not looking good. In August, we had another immunotherapy round because this was monthly. So try the monthly immunotherapy round. At this point, his cancer had obviously, because of the high spreading rate, had gotten even worse, had gone to different spots of the body. And so the treatment was even harder on him. They were also attempting to do radiation on the spine, basically laying him down on his back and shooting it from the front. And he was very uncomfortable and in so much pain that it was like he couldn't even lay down. Like he said, I remember him telling me, I can't do it anymore. I can't lay there and receive the radiation because I'm in too much pain. So, and then the similar thing happened with the previous immunotherapy treatment where it just made him react so badly that at the end of August, we went for another ER trip. And this ER trip was like as if the trip to MD Anderson, wasn't bad enough with all the news we learned there. This ER trip, it's like every time we were met with a doctor, every time, somebody found out something new, it was just more bad news. Right. So the middle of August, or right in that area, he is in ER and they do some scans and, CT scans, I believe, at that point. And they see that now the cancer has spread to his lungs and more areas of bone that it hadn't been before. The bone metastases that it was already in were getting larger. And so we were at this point of like not knowing, what to do here because the treatments were not working. The options were very slim. And he was in a tremendous amount of pain. So it was like what I explain to people when I tell them this story is that it was a full-time job for me to keep him out of pain. Like it was around the clock care of ice and heat and putting it on the different areas and CBD balms that I was rubbing on areas that had metastases. I was, giving obviously pain medication. I had RSO, full extract cannabis oil that I was putting in his drinks and smoothies and things, just anything that I could do to try to keep him out of pain. Position changes. I mean, it was literally around the clock. And then in addition, I had a nursing baby still. So my baby was a year and a half and he was still nursing and still the kids had to go to school. Actually, they weren't in school for summertime, but we were gearing up for that in September. So life was crazy. Life was very hard at this time, obviously. It was very emotional. It was very stressful. There was so much going on in such a short amount of time. And when you're going through that much, it's like your brain doesn't have time to process, everything that's even happening at the time. It was so much that one of my therapies, one of my outlets was working out and running became one of my escapes. It was the only time that I had for like myself. And it was the time that I would pray and cry and scream out to God and cuss and let it all out. And that was like my time. And my running became very sacred to me. That time became very sacred to me. I still have journal entries from things that I, heard, so to speak, like messages I received, divine messages during this time, clarifications that came to me, and just the amount of emotions that I was able to process through doing that. So those became like what I called my miles for Mark. And I wrote, here's another thing I wrote when I was going through this process, and this was in the family group that I shared. And so this is a post that I wrote, and it says, every needle I've watched go into his skin, one step. Every night I've had to hear him cry out in pain, another step. Every time he has snapped at me out of sheer frustration, another step. Every time I've screamed or cried, another step. Every time I've had to hold one of my babies to comfort them. Every time I've had to calculate months of life expectancy in my head. Every time I've hated everyone and everything in fucking existence. Every single time I've felt weak, broken, and in utter despair. One foot in front of the other, all of this pounded out through my feet that have carried me thus far. These are my miles for Mark. So my miles for Mark became kind of an anthem at this time. And this is where our Black Ribbon Army came in full force. And it was amazing to see. So I had family that was also running for Mark. They were doing miles at, Relay for Life events. And we were basically just showing him that we loved him and we were supporting him and fighting along with him and, pushing our bodies as hard as we could while he was suffering through this excruciating battle. So like I said, during this time, there was a lot of logistics of our family, our finances, along with all of the doctor appointments. And I'm still carving out this time for my self-care. And we were shown so much love and support during this time. This is where, like I said, the Black Ribbon Army came in, because as our battle got hotter, we started to see more people coming out and helping us and supporting us and offering, support in different ways. As I mentioned, the running for us at Relay for Life, there were fundraisers that So my husband was law enforcement out at the prison, though the prison family had, come together and done fundraisers for him, knowing that, we were going to be without work and without income. So it was a really incredible time of feeling supported by everybody. We had my really sweet cousins, Jen and Holly, started something called an Amazon Love Train. And if you guys ever have a family member or a friend that is going through a difficult time, I highly, highly, highly suggest doing this. And their idea and concept behind the Love Train was that they put together like an Amazon list of things for our family. So little goodies and snacks for the kids, little activities, comfort items for Mark, self-care things for me, bath bombs, whatever. And I think it was every single week, somebody got to like adopt us and, shower our family with love from that love train. And so they would go on the Amazon list and, pick a few things and have those gifted to our family that week. And it was such a sweet, sweet thing for so many people to do for us. Like every single day, almost, like we would go out and there would be packages, and, it was just such a blessing to our family during that time. So like I said, if you guys ever have a family member or a friend that is going through a difficult time, consider doing something like that, because it really, really blessed us. And I hold those women and everybody that did that for us close to my heart, because it was just amazing. The fundraisers and support were really, like I said, kicking up. They did a really cool event on the coast that we were unable to go to because Mark's cancer had gotten so bad so quickly, but we got lots of photos and videos of everything, and it was really awesome just to see people come together and show their support for us. So, and then we had family, like I mentioned, my mom had come up to visit to stay with the kids while we were in Houston. And then Mark's parents were coming over and doing a lot for us, and he had friends, and we had different people that were, pitching in and bringing us meals or, helping in any way they could. And this was amazing. And during this very, very difficult time, because, like I said, when your entire life has been rattled up and shook up to being something it's totally, wasn't before. And, now we're dealing with all this new, crazy, traumatic, scary stuff. Like, it was so awesome to be supported and loved by our people. So that was our Black Ribbon Army. And I am absolutely so grateful for them. We were at this point around the end of August with the failed treatments and, things progressing, not really sure where we were supposed to go next, like there was not a lot of options. And Mark was at the point of, I remember him saying to me so many times, I'm just done. I can't do it anymore, and, everybody, his family, me, everybody's telling him, you got to fight through it. And, I remember him telling me like, I can't fight it. I can't fight anymore. And one thing about melanoma is that, it is nicknamed the Black Beast. So melanoma does not discriminate tissues or areas of the body that it decides to go to. It just goes where it wants. Whereas if you were to have a different, more localized type of cancer, it might only metastasize to that local area, right? Which makes it a little more manageable or something that's treatable. But melanoma, I pictured it in my head. The visual I got that really kind of made it click for me was Venom, the movie Venom, where this black thing is just taking over. And I could literally like picture that going on inside of his body with this cancer, just like invading and taking over and eating away and destroying and disrupting. And he was in so much pain and so uncomfortable. And it got to the point to the end of August with that last ER trip that he said, this is the last time I will go to the hospital. And because they had to give him so much pain medication to even get the pain under control that it was like it made him, completely out of it mentally. And, he was just like, I can't do this anymore. So the end of August, we made the decision to go on palliative comfort, hospice care, to basically just help him be able to transition comfortably as possible because, right, like there was so much pain. And so at this time, and that was like a very, very, very hard decision to make. That was a punch in the gut. I was 35 at the time. He was 42. Our older kids were 14 and 12. The girls were 8 and 6. And then, of course, the baby was not quite 2. So it was really, really like, oh my God, like we had to, I remember for the first time seeing the paperwork in front of me for, making all of those like end of life decisions and stuff and just being like, what in the hell? Like, I'm in my 30s. I should not have to be thinking about this right now, but this is what we were dealing with. And it was, like I said, it was very emotional. It was very hard. We did obviously have to tell our children what was going on. And that was hard. It was very hard because obviously they were seeing their dad go from, this man that would come home and, bale hay and, mow the yard and, work on guns and do all this stuff to me literally having to do everything for him. So this was also something that they had to go through, and experience. So we're at the beginning of September when he decided to go on palliative care because the cancer had spread to so many places and the treatment was not successful. The week that we met with the hospice doctor and, basically Mark told them, he said, I'm done. I don't want to prolong this any longer. I don't see the point of, suffering till I die and my family having to watch that. And so, he asked them what they could do. And she told him, well, it wasn't legal to, like outright just end somebody's life, but that they could, give the palliative measures and the medication that would sort of induce, what was already naturally happening. So that was the decision that he wanted to make. And we made that together, just seeing that there was no other way out, right? Like there was no other option. So, the first day that they started the comfort care on him and they got him set up in the bed, and they started the, medication, and it was like this peace came upon my home of like, okay. and it wasn't like, I was happy that it was happening, obviously, but it was this piece of like, he's finally out of pain. He's finally comfortable because he had been so miserable and which, obviously made it hard for everybody, right? So at this point, the comfort care, he spent about 24 hours under that. I would administer the medication if I could tell he was uncomfortable. He wasn't able to speak to us, but he would kind of moan a little bit. And it was basically like he was asleep. But he could also respond to us also. So if I asked him something, he could like say, or for a little bit. And that was more early on when they first started this. So, like I remember my littlest girl, she got up on and wanted to snuggle him. She was only 6 at the time. And, and I was telling him, I said, this is your baby girl. I was like, you love her, huh? And he was like, uh-huh. So, we had these moments toward the end of, closure and peace. And the morning of September 14th, I woke up at, I'm not sure what time it was actually. I think it was 4 in the morning or so. I heard him moaning a bit in discomfort. So I went and I administered the medication to get him comfortable, checked everything. He looked good. He was very comfortable. I was like, okay, I can get a couple hours of sleep. Went back, went to sleep. And then by the time I woke up, he was gone. And it was like, I had this moment of where I went out and I checked and I looked and I didn't see him breathing. And I probably stopped breathing at that moment too. I was just like, oh my God, like really right now? Like they didn't, they said it could be anywhere from 3 to 5 to 2, days to 2 weeks for this palliative care for them to actually pass, not 24 hours later. Right. So I literally, the first thing I said was, it wasn't supposed to be right now. It wasn't supposed to be today. Like it's something like that, where I was like, wait a minute. Like it was that disbelief, that happens when somebody passes like that. It was very, very shocking. And I remember calling his mom because they were on their way over. We'd had the whole day planned out of what we were going to do. Projects around the house, stuff with the kids, all this stuff. And so I called her and I had lost my shit at this point, right? Like I was not okay. And she was like, it's okay. We're on our way. Well, meanwhile, the kids woke up and he's in the living room. So I'm like, okay, I got to pull myself together, right? And so I was like, all right, let's come in here and have breakfast. And I brought him to the kitchen and just took him right past Dad. I didn't let them see him. I, just tried to act as if everything was normal. Had to change baby's diaper, had to get them fed, all of this. My husband's cousin, Shelly, she came out and got the little girls and took them. That way they, we could at least have those two out of the house. But then, it was, dealing with, the funeral home and the hospice people showing up. And, that day is still probably very foggy in my mind. It's very surreal to think about that day and to remember the things that I remember as far as, like them taking off his wedding rings and handing them to me and seeing his face before they zipped up that bag for the final time, and just certain things where that day, is cemented in my memory of a very, very significant day. And we spent that day together as a family, his parents, our children, our older children. And then that night, the prison held a candlelight vigil for him, which was very beautiful. They, lowered the flags to half mast. It was just a very, very, very beautiful way to honor him that night. So after he passed, it was just a fog. I was in a fog. I was in this, I would go outside and just look up at the sky. I would just search the sky. Where did you go? It was just very weird. I didn't understand what grief was. I would cry. I would have my moments of crying. And then it was then it would hit me. And I remember one time, this was in the first few days, I went out to he had a little shed that had all of his gun and hunting stuff in it. And I went out there to get something. And it was literally someone punched the shit out of me in the guts. It was just I can't even other than that's what it felt like someone just with all their force just went, punched me hard in the guts. And I lost my breath and I dropped to my knees and I was choking and sobbing. And I was in this space of, holy shit, this hurts. This hurts bad. I don't want to cry right now, but hold space for that version of myself, right? Man, it hurt bad. It hurt really bad. And that first week was a fuck. I'd lost everything. I had lost my provider, my best friend, my kid's dad. Gone. Just gone. like I said, I would go out and I would search the skies. I would pray. Monday morning when we went with his parents to the funeral home to make arrangements for the service. And, he wanted to be cremated. So we made all of those plans. And I remember them, us going through all the plans. And then when we got done, they said, do you want any, can we do anything else for you? And all I could think was, yeah, go freaking get him and bring him back to me. And that was rough. That was so rough. The service was about a week later. My parents flew up for that. That was when I got to see the Army finally in like full force, that Black Ribbon Army that we had. I got to see everybody in the numbers and the amount of people that were there. It was amazing. It was beautiful. It was beyond description. I mean, the amount of people that showed up to show support for him and our family was just absolutely beautiful. The service was amazing. Obviously, that was also a fog. I was very disassociated out of it. I look back at pictures of it and I was like, well, I was there, but I wasn't there. Like I was physically there and I got through it. But man, there was a lot going on there with my mind, and as I was processing all of this stuff, and that feeling of almost being numb. I know that those of you that have gone through feeling things like this, you get to that feeling of like you don't feel anything because you felt so much pain and so much craziness that it's like now I just feel nothing. And them handing me the flag, watching them do the whole thing where they're folding the flag and handing it to me, like all of this stuff was just surreal. It was surreal. It was like, is this really my life? Like, it was like I was watching my life as a movie as I was not there. And that was crazy. That was really crazy. But like I said, the support that was there was absolutely amazing. The family, the friends, it was just beautiful. After he passed, the support continued. That Black Ribbon Army stayed strong for us. They were so amazing. They continued with fundraisers. They continued with gifting things to our family, meal trains, my kids' school. All the teachers and aides had kind of put together, a thing too, where they had brought us food. And I mean, we were just being surrounded with love, surrounded with support during this time. And it was so, so awesome. It was awesome, but I also have to bring in the point, I'm sorry, that it was also almost too awesome, that it was almost too invasive. As I mentioned before, I'm a very private person. So this whole process of cancer and losing him and his service and everything being on Facebook and all of these mass fundraisers, as amazing as they were, it also felt so invasive, like so invasive. Like I felt like everybody was looking at our family like we were in this glass fishbowl, so to speak, and everybody was watching us. And so it was very hard to almost, it felt like I was in the public eye, so to speak, and be processing and dealing with all of this stuff. And that invasive, people being in my space all the time. I did not know nearly as much about boundaries then as I do now. So I was, had a lot of people around us at that time that, probably should not have been. And that will be more in the next episode as well. But I want to focus more on the positive still as far as the support that was around us with the Black Ribbon Army. These people, there was a large group of people that came out, and one of Mark's goals for that year for our family we had an older home in the Applegate Valley and the roof leaked. And so he wanted to, in several different spots. And so he wanted to replace the roof. His plan was for that summer, he was going to work a bunch of overtime and replace the roof. Well, obviously he got diagnosed with cancer. So, and everybody, when they asked him what, he wanted, as far as support, he said, can you please just, give my family a new roof for our home? And so, they were trying to get it done before he passed. But then obviously with that timeline, being so what it was, we did not have that time. And so that project ended up getting done after he passed. And it was super, super awesome to see. I think one day we had like 30 people out on our property working on the roof. And there was, ladies out there feeding the crew, and there was raffles done and fundraisers done. And so it was really, really awesome just to have all of this support around us and, have this go on. But I'm going to leave today's episode where it's at, because the next episode is going to kind of pick up where this support and having this army around me and having all these people around me kind of picks up. So we're just going to leave it at the state for this episode, that by, let's say, the end of September, 2 weeks or so after he passed, the roof had gotten done. We had been surrounded with lots of love and support. We had people around us, but it was still really hard. I was still really struggling. I was not okay. I was trying to take care of business and do everything that I had to do, of course, being a mom, taking care of, finances and, everything that was put in front of me as far as that was concerned. But I didn't know my head from my ass at that time. And I was in a foggy, foggy whirlwind. So that was my story of widowhood and how I became a widow at age 35, when the average age of a widow is in around the 60s, I believe. So again, darkest, hardest time of my life, walking through the actual valley of death, seeing things, experiencing things that I would never wish on anybody. And having, that long-lasting effect of this loss, that it still affects us. It still affects our family. It still affects my children. It still affects me, infiltrates different parts of my life in different ways. So it's something that we've done a lot of healing from, but it's not something that we're healed from yet. And hence why, if you see me talking about my healing journey, you can see kind of where this stuff started to originate, with why I'm so big into healing, is from this being the biggest trauma of my life. And if we remember to also the previous episode where I talked about my sevens, right? I had my traumas at 7, 14, 21, 28. I was 35, obviously, when this happened. So this was a huge, huge 7 for me. This was a huge one. So, well, I'm so blessed and happy in my life now to be out of this and to have survived it. Again, it's a very, very dark chapter of my life, and very hard to talk about even to this day, as evidenced by earlier. But again, I'm completely in awe and so grateful for my army, for the people that have still stuck around from all of that, and the new people that have been brought into my life since then that have become such a huge, amazing part of my life. My new husband, and just our life together is so amazing and beautiful. And I wouldn't have that without this dark chapter, so part of my healing and part of my acceptance is to be able to tell this chapter and be able to share this chapter. This is what came of all of this, right? Like this stuff just didn't happen overnight, right? And the next episode too, this is going to also set the stage for how I actually met Scott. So it's gonna get good, y'all. I'm telling you, the next few episodes, you're gonna be like, holy crap, because if we thought that a lot happened in the 4 months from the date of diagnosis to the date of my husband's death, oh my goodness, my life went in this high speed. I got the I must have signed up for like some sort of express version for like my soul's growth through my dark night or something, because I went through it in like lightning speed of time is what it seems like, of all this crazy stuff happening all at once. So next few episodes are about that very first relationship I got in after being widowed, and then leading to how I met Scott, to our runaway to Arizona, and will kind of lead to where we are now. So thank you so much for tuning in. And if you or someone that you know has been lost to cancer, just know that I love you. I see you. I get it. I'm with you. All right. Thank you so much.